Hi, this is Alan Olson, and welcome to American Dreams. My guest today is Paul Callister. Paul, welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Paul, you got a unique background. For the listeners, can you take us through, your journey since, let's start at college.
Sure. I went to Brigham Young University in Provo, started in chemical engineering and ended in philosophy, which I graduated in, and then got married about that time, and then went to Cornell Law School, where I had an interesting experience, practiced law with my family's law firm in Glendale, California, near Los Angeles, doing mostly tax-related and transactional work, and was not particularly fulfilled or happy and not anxious to take over a family business, which may seem odd. In my 8th year there, or after my 8th year, I entered a program at the University of Illinois Graduate Schools for Librarian Information Science. It was getting a master's degree. And I did it online so I could keep working. So most of the program was online. And got a master's degree from there, which effectively made me a librarian as well as an attorney.
I gotta ask this question. Okay, so You went from a family business,
right,
into an academia position, law library. What is it that in that transition that you were seeking to gain?
A lot of it had to do with, there's not one thing, but one of the driving things was finding a place where my talents could allow me to excel in a way that I felt satisfied and that would eventually bring in a decent income for my family. And while law librarianship and librarianship generally is not well paid, I'm now a library director and make sufficient for our family's needs. So,
well, when you look at law and its information environment, why does that become so important to us as a society?
It really makes a difference. For instance, the Greeks used an alphabet that was democratic. It's called the Demotic script, and they wrote everything on stone stele, and they believed that the worst thing you could do was hide the law. And they were, they had slavery, but they had a democracy for a period, and they had assemblies and dicasts, and people would participate in that. You compare that to, for instance, the Egyptians, and the Egyptians' form of writing, they wrote on papyrus, and they had some very interesting features of their legal system, but one of which is you had to have a scribal class of priests because their language is not purely phonetic. It has silent determinants. And for law, every concept I could find that was a legal concept has a silent glyph. A determinant is a glyph, a hieroglyph. That is a scroll, which means it's connected to writing. And you would know that as a priest, but you would not know that if you were someone who was illiterate, which this priestly class was really the only literate class. And so their society depended much more on having a priestly class mediating. It didn't matter who took over Egypt, they had to have the same priestly class. So things like that can make a huge difference in how laws function, where you have Greece, where everyone's participating in democracy and hearings, court hearings. They have an assembly of like 500 that listen to things. The famous one that sentenced Socrates to death, unfortunately. And Greece, where you depend on this scribal class to run the country. And that has caused me to wonder, just a hypothesis, is China, because its language is fundamentally different, or was, they're simplified Chinese now, is because it's much more difficult to learn. You have to have a scribal class, an enlightened class, and that brings up a different kind of society than, say, we have here in the West, our Anglo-American European tradition, where literacy became extremely important with the Bible. And after the Bible came political tracts and legal books, and became much more accessible to a much broader class of people.
Yeah, the world there, you walked in through the Greeks, the Romans, and Egyptians, through society today, and obviously the world has become a lot smaller with the internet.
Sure.
And the question I have, now we have generative AI, right? And I understand you did some work on generative AI, and there's been some funny things happen when people try to do their court cases on using AI.
Yeah.
So, but walk us through the impact that you see AI having in this industry.
Well, we need to distinguish two types. The first is what the public's going to have, which is ChatGPT and Bard and some of the others that are available. And they are not specifically trained on legal texts. Then there are a huge movement that's really starting to peak in the law vendors, the ones that hold lots of legal information, including legal information that's edited and a commentary on our primary law, our statutes, our cases, regulations, etc., which is really the valuable stuff. And those vendors are launching what's called generative AI with retrieval augmented generation, meaning it has a search function. It will go out and pull information in instead of just having a training base that is designed to converse with you. That's what ChatGPT has. This is an oversimplification, but you have something designed to converse with you that has some background on the topic. And because it's baked into the language, you get things that are relevant some of the time. Now, or a lot of the time. But with the legal profession, we're going to see a very different kind of AI as they implement these search devices. And they're talking about, it's not just a keyword search anymore. We're talking about a vectorized search. And what I mean is they've taken language and broken it down, words, into dimensions. 300 dimensions is probably what was used in ChatGPT. Sentences, they've turned into vectors. All the things they're related to, all the words and sentences they're related to that co-occur within a certain period or that have certain properties and characteristics. And so they're able to manipulate that. And when you're searching by vectors and not keywords themselves. And so you can get very different kinds of results and find relationships that you wouldn't otherwise find. I think on what's going to happen on the vendor side is that is very expensive what they're doing. And so it will continue to create a class of lawyers, small firm lawyers who do not have the majority of law practice in the country, who have access to these tools, and maybe another class of lawyers who do not. And already that has happened even without generative AI. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it seems like right now we're at the very beginning of something big.
Yeah.
So if I can then move through, we talked about you as a law librarian, but also you're a law professor. Well, what subjects are you teaching?
Right now, copyright law, and I've just proposed, of course, AI and the law, which will be fun. Yeah, copyright law was big. I tried to avoid that as a new librarian and could not. I didn't after doing pension law and tax law, I didn't want a hyper-technical field, but it was everywhere. And I was always being come to as a librarian to help kind of guide people on these copyright issues that they were going to use in class. I have time to call university counsel, and usually I would tell them when there's danger and not tell them, yes, it's okay, but there's danger of these issues. So I started participating on a national level with our library association, and I started getting into it, and eventually I was asked to teach it. I also taught cyber law for a long time, and that had a heavy copyright component. And so it's just been a natural progression. And I've written some about copyright issues for my own growth and published on the issues. So that I enjoy it. I enjoy the intellectual stimulation of it. I enjoy teaching it to students. My class, I'm finding out, is known as a hard class, but I still get people taking the course. And it brings me a lot of sense of fulfillment and some utility. I can actually help out. I don't practice law. I'm not university counsel, but I sometimes can say, no, don't do that. We'll protect the university from some liability.
So is using ChatGPT to write a paper in your class ethical? With copyright law, what's your...
The university default is that you don't use it unless the professor allows it. So I have a policy that when I specify that they can use it and they explain why they use it, I will allow it. So it's going to be probably in my advanced... I also teach advanced legal research, different courses, and American legal research to foreign students. It's at a research course. And I will specify when we will use ChatGPT or other devices. It's a huge topic right now. Some of my colleagues, I was on vacation, unfortunately, but some of my colleagues just came back excited from a conference with legal research and writing instructors who focus on first-year students and teaching them how to write briefs and things. And they're excited about, well, maybe this will be helpful. Maybe this will help them brainstorm. Maybe this will help them organize their thoughts. And others who say, not over my dead body, they have to learn that themselves, how to organize. And there's similar arguments on the research side, which is really what I do, that they need to struggle on their own, or will this help them organize a research plan?
What do you see as the future of libraries with this technology environment progressing the way that it is?
The future is really in librarians. We're going to need, they may be called information sciences. That was scientists. That was the debate my first day of library school at Illinois. But our role will be to help exactly teach the questions. And generative AI is meant to be used as a conversation, not just a one-time question like on Google, but repeated. You get the best results by interacting it and following up with questions. And I have spent a lot of time learning about generative AI through ChatGPT and I think Bard and other systems, and I've learned that you have to keep following up question after question, and you get answers that you didn't expect. Sometimes by questions with questions you didn't really ask about it, but you get inside knowledge, and that's an area where I kind of trust what I'm learning. Law, less so. So.
Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure having you with us today on American Dreams.
Well, thank you.